She pointed at the janitor and laughed. I told HR not to let staff like that into executive halls. Everyone chuckled nervously. But within hours, that same janitor sat in her chair, now her boss, unveiling a truth that would shake the company's foundations. Can someone please get this janitor out of the executive hallway? Evelyn Sharp's voice cut through the silence like a whip cracking in a courtroom. She didn't whisper, didn't blink. The young CEO of Sharp Tech, heels echoing off the polished marble, was halfway through her Monday morning strut when she stopped dead in front of a man in a faded uniform pushing a mop bucket. He was quiet, older, balding a little. His name tag simply read John. Everyone called him Mr. John. Jesus, Evelyn muttered, fanning the air like she'd stepped in filth. Do I look like I want to smell bleach before a board meeting? The room felt awkwardly quiet. Employees froze mid-step. No one dared to speak. HR intern Jessica glanced up from the corner and immediately buried her face behind her clipboard. But Mr. John didn't say a word. He offered a soft, tired smile, moved his mop aside, and gently wheeled the bucket against the wall. Sorry for being in the way, ma'am, he said. Calm, respectful, even kind. Evelyn rolled her eyes and clicked away, her voice trailing with a loud, mocking, "You should have retired 10 years ago." The elevator doors closed behind her, and just like that, everyone exhaled. But Mr. John didn't move right away. He stood still for a few seconds, eyes scanning the floor, breathing in slowly. Not out of anger, out of memory. Because the same hallway where he now scrubbed scuff marks off tiles, he once designed from scratch. Every beam, every corner, every firewall buried behind the walls. It was all his. He just chose to vanish. They called him Mr. John, not realizing the Mr. wasn't for manners. It was for Miles. Jonathan Miles, founding mind behind VetraSource Encryption, a cybersecurity platform worth billions. He had walked away from it all. Fame, shares, a title. Because when his wife died and his daughter was diagnosed with a degenerative illness, he chose family over fortune. Years later, widowed, with no one left but his 6-year-old granddaughter Lily, he returned. Not as a legend, but as a janitor. Anonymous. Until today. Because today, something had shifted. Lily's medical bills were climbing. And Evelyn Sharp, the woman who had mocked him twice this week and denied his leave request to attend Lily's hospital scans, had unknowingly stepped onto a minefield. She didn't know he still owned 49% of Sharp Tech under a dormant holding name. She didn't know he had just been approached by the board's largest investor with an offer to increase his stake. She didn't know who she just mocked, but she was about to find out. That afternoon, in the janitor's supply room behind sub-basement level 1, John removed his gloves and unlocked the safe hidden under a cabinet of broken bulbs. Inside, a dusty, hardbound notebook with architectural blueprints, a flash drive containing his original server schematics, a thumbprint scanner he'd once built from scratch, and a sealed envelope marked "Activate only if they forget who you are." He took out the flash drive and stared at the photo taped to the inside of the safe. Lily, her small hands holding a toy stethoscope, her toothy grin beaming under hospital lights. He kissed the picture gently and whispered, "It's time, sweetheart." Outside, Evelyn was giving a TED-style internal presentation titled, "Rise Ruthless: Why Empathy Slows Innovation." But what she didn't know was that the man she had just belittled was the true architect of her entire company. And he was about to return, not with fury, but with facts, with power, and with a quiet kind of justice only the forgotten can deliver. By Wednesday morning, the whispers had begun. It started with a single email. Subject: Urgent Stakeholder Ledger Update. From Gregory Baines, GPB Capital Holdings. 2. Sharp Tech Board. Please be advised, Jonathan Miles has now acquired a controlling interest in Sharp Tech via dormant Class A legacy shares tied to VetraSource Infrastructure. Effective immediately, boardroom restructuring discussions will be initiated. Non-disclosure terms and original IP charter have expired as of Q2. Most of the board didn't recognize the name, but CFO Alan Cooper did. He stared at the email for 10 straight minutes, then slowly removed his glasses, stood up from his glass-walled office, and looked out at the lower-level maintenance hallway. And there he was, the janitor, quietly refilling a paper towel dispenser. Alan stumbled back into his chair, heart pounding. He hadn't heard that name in 15 years. Because Jonathan Miles wasn't just a co-founder. He was the founder. The ghost tech genius who had built the digital security system SharpTech was now known for. Then disappeared after a devastating family tragedy. Everyone assumed he'd cashed out. No one imagined he'd come back like this. And Evelyn, still clueless. That same morning, she stormed into the HR wing, throwing down a form onto a new assistant's desk. "Why haven't we terminated that janitor yet?" she snapped. "He keeps showing up outside my executive door. I want him reassigned or gone. He creeps me out." Jessica, timid, fresh from grad school, glanced at the form, cheeks flushing. I don't have permission to override personnel in that department." His assignment was directly approved by facilities and legal. "Then overrule them," Evelyn shouted, waving manicured hands in the air. "Or do I have to scrub my own floors now?" John walked past the frosted window, just as she screamed that last line. He paused only briefly, glanced sideways, and kept walking. But Evelyn didn't see it. Didn't notice the subtle shift in hallway energy. Didn't see her assistant's nervous glances. Didn't realize something tectonic was already shifting beneath her polished floors. That night, 1:17 a.m., inside the secured server room, where only level 3 authorized personnel had access, a silent boot sequence initiated. Miles protocol, admin shell override, voice sprint confirmed, DNA scan verified. John sat in a corner chair, dressed in his old lab coat. The coat he used to wear when SharpTech was just a warehouse startup with no lights and no heat. On screen, architectural flaws in the current system. Dangerous gaps in cybersecurity Evelyn had ignored to save quarterly profits. He could have shut it all down, crashed the system, exposed the company's data vulnerabilities. But that wasn't who he was. Not anymore. He simply printed the logs, stamped them with a forensic time seal, and prepared a case file. Not for retaliation. For a boardroom takedown. One that couldn't be denied, couldn't be twisted, couldn't be laughed away. It would start with a simple reveal, one Evelyn would never see coming. Thursday morning, 9 a.m., executive meeting room. The SharpTech board assembled like clockwork. Fresh espresso, folded notes, suit jackets still reeking of overpriced cologne. Evelyn walked in wearing a blood-red pantsuit, her presence sharp and biting. "Let's begin," she said without pleasantries. "Gregory Baines wants to discuss innovation alignment." "Fine, but keep it brief. We're 3 days away from signing the Aegis security deal, and—" She froze, because seated at the head of the table wasn't Gregory. It was him, the janitor, not in his uniform, but in a navy suit, hair slicked back, wearing the same hummingbird lapel pin he once gave his late wife the day she beat cancer, before it returned 2 years later and stole her away for good. Who the hell let him in here? Evelyn scoffed, spinning toward her assistant. John stood slowly. "Good morning, Evelyn." The room stiffened. A few board members stood up instinctively. "Ms. Sharp," Gregory's voice rang out from the speaker system overhead. "Meet your new chairman. As of 6:02 a.m. this morning, Mr. Miles has full control of SharpTech's legacy patents, foundational IP, and shareholder authority." Evelyn's pupils contracted. What? John slid the forensic packet across the table to the general counsel. "Here are the structural vulnerabilities in your current security grid. Had they leaked last week, you'd be looking at full-blown breach. I fixed them at 3:13 this morning. You're welcome." The general counsel opened the file and visibly blanched. Gregory's voice returned. "Ms. Sharp, effective immediately, your executive powers are suspended pending internal review. Mr. Miles will act as interim CEO until further notice." Evelyn stepped back. "No, this is a setup. He's a janitor." John tilted his head. "No, I was a janitor because I needed to stay close. I needed to watch. And you," his voice softened, "you reminded me why I left this place to begin with." Later that night, in the quiet of an empty office, John took out a folded picture of Lily, her laugh frozen in time, her four-pole just off frame. He whispered, "Papa kept his promise, baby." He didn't need to destroy Evelyn. He just needed her to feel what she made others feel, dismissed, disrespected, forgotten. But that wasn't the end, because what came next was redemption and kindness, even for the one who mocked him most. The news hit like a thunderclap across the industry. Janitor takes over tech empire. Founding ghost returns. CEO ousted in secret buyout. Who is Jonathan Miles? It spread like wildfire. Within 48 hours, Evelyn Sharp's name was no longer associated with innovation or leadership. It was synonymous with humiliation. She didn't leave the penthouse for 3 days. She shut off her phone, didn't check her emails, didn't respond to her father's text that read only. You embarrassed the family. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through comment threads under leaked footage of the boardroom confrontation. They called her ruthless, fake, plastic, arrogant, and worse, blind. Because John hadn't just taken over Sharp Tech. He'd exposed it. Her inflated budgets. Her HR policies that pushed out disabled employees. The undocumented subcontractor layoffs during the pandemic. All of it. Logged, printed, time-stamped, and submitted to the media as part of his Transparency for Tomorrow initiative. No lawsuits. No backroom threats. Just quiet, meticulous truth. And it crushed her. Meanwhile, back inside Sharp Tech's newly transformed HQ, things were different. John didn't renovate the office. He renovated culture. Every department now had an open forum every Friday afternoon called Ground Floor Voice, where staff, from interns to janitors, could anonymously raise concerns. He walked the floor each morning, talked to people, remember names, even brought Lily in once a week to sit with him in the tech lab and help with design feedback. She made everyone smile, especially Rosa. Rosa was the single mother Evelyn had once fired for missing too many shifts due to her son's leukemia treatments. Now, she sat across from John in a modest office with a nameplate that read, Rosa Martinez, Director of Employee Wellness. The day she got promoted, she cried. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she finally felt seen. John saw to it that no one in the company would ever have to choose between survival and dignity again. But Evelyn, she was drowning. Her old friends had gone silent. Investors distanced themselves. Job offers vanished the moment her name popped up on LinkedIn. Even her favorite upscale restaurant, the one where she used to mock staff over low-tipping customers, refused her reservation. You're trending right now, the hostess said flatly. It's bad optics. She walked back to her apartment alone that night. For the first time in years, she cried without anyone watching. And then, just as the elevator opened to her floor, she saw it. A bouquet of sunflowers at her door. No note, no signature, just a single envelope tucked inside. She opened it. Inside was a photo. A little girl in a hospital bed. Lily. On the back, in faint handwriting. Sometimes kindness isn't seen. Sometimes it just waits. Until it's safe. No threat. No vengeance. Just a reminder. And it shattered her. The next day, she showed up at Sharp Tech. No makeup. No entourage. She entered the lobby quietly, head down, hands trembling. Security buzzed, confused. But John was already waiting. In the cafe on the ground floor, he sat sipping lukewarm coffee, still in the same worn gray blazer he wore every Wednesday. She approached, eyes red. I'm not here to fight, she said softly. I know, he replied, pulling out the chair beside him. I didn't know who you were. You didn't care, he corrected, gently, but without flinching. She nodded. You're right. Then silence. For nearly 2 minutes. I didn't used to be like that, she whispered. I kept thinking kindness was weakness. That power meant being the sharpest voice in the room. He looked up at her, his voice low. You forgot something important. What's that? That even sharp voices get hoarse when no one's listening. She choked out a soft laugh. That's a better line than I ever wrote. I had time to think, he said. Then something shifted. She reached in her bag and pulled out a stack of papers. Crumpled. Handwritten. I've been writing. About everything. My mistakes. What I saw. What I didn't see. Maybe I could speak to the interns sometime. Or do something real. I don't want this to be how my story ends. John studied her. Not the power suit. Not the broken pride. The person underneath. And after a long pause, he nodded once. You have one condition. She leaned forward. You don't speak as a guest, he said. You speak as someone willing to clean up what she helped break. She didn't argue. Didn't beg. She simply said, okay. And from that day, Evelyn Sharp began her slow, painful walk back toward grace. The week Evelyn returned to Sharp Tech, not as CEO, not even as an employee, but as a volunteer, nobody spoke to her. Not Rosa. Not Jessica from HR. Not even the intern whose coffee she once spilled and never apologized for. She showed up at 7 a.m. sharp, dressed in plain jeans and a sharp tech hoodie. No heels. No Rolex. Just gloves, a clipboard, and a quiet determination. She didn't ask for validation. She just started cleaning. Not desks. Not screens. Reputation. She reviewed hundreds of termination reports, personally called laid-off employees, took down notes, asked for second chances on their behalf. Some cursed her out. Some hung up. Some cried. She took it all. In one staff meeting, a bold junior coder asked, "Why are you even here? What's in it for you now?" Evelyn paused, then answered without flinching, "Because I once mistook cruelty for strength. And if I don't clean that up myself, I'm no better than the image you all saw online." She didn't flinch when someone muttered, "Too late." John, who was observing quietly from the back, stood up and said, "Forgiveness doesn't have a deadline, but it does require showing up every day." And Evelyn kept showing up. Meanwhile, John faced a different kind of pressure. One of the board members, Marshall Clay, had approached him with a proposition. A buyout. A real one. $380 million for the remaining shares. "You've proven your point, John," Marshall said. "You humiliated her, cleaned up her mess, reinvented your image. Hell, you're practically a national symbol now. Take the money. Retire for real this time." John didn't answer right away. He looked down at the check Marshall slid across the table. But then, he opened his phone, pulled up a video. Lily laughing, pushing her four-pole like a race car down a hospital hallway. A nurse chasing behind. He didn't need more money. He needed to leave something behind. Something right. He slid the check back. "I didn't come here to prove a point," John said softly. "I came here to fix what I once abandoned." Marshall leaned back. "You're too sentimental. One of these days, it'll cost you." John smiled. "Maybe, but today isn't that day." That Friday, 11:30 a.m., company cafeteria. Evelyn sat alone at lunch. Again, until Rosa walked up, holding a second tray. No words, no dramatic entrance. She just sat down. Evelyn blinked. "Are you?" Rosa cut her off gently. "You made 3 calls to my sister. Apologized each time. Got her hired back at your competitor with a raise. You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Evelyn whispered. Rosa nodded. "That's the point." Then something incredible happened. Employees began to trickle in and sit near her. Not next to her. Not all at once. But close. It was the company's quiet way of saying, "We're watching. We're not sure we trust you, but we're willing to see where this goes." Evelyn didn't cry. She just picked up her fork and whispered, "Thank you." Then came the audit. A former executive Evelyn had fired months before, Nick Breen, came forward with receipts, expense reports, hidden shell contracts. Not from Evelyn, but from another VP who'd quietly been bleeding the company dry while she was taking all the heat. John was furious. They had spent months fixing the damage, only to discover another betrayal hiding beneath the surface. The VP in question, Russell Marks, smiled during the confrontation. "You really think your janitor redemption arc's going to save this place? It's all smoke. Shareholders want blood." John stared at him coldly, then turned to Evelyn. "What would you do?" he asked her directly. "Right now, if this were your call." She hesitated, then stood up. "I'd fire him, press charges, freeze his assets, and alert every internal team." John nodded once. "Good." Then turned back to Russell. "You're done here." And in that moment, Evelyn realized he trusted her judgment again. Just a sliver, but enough to matter. That night, after hours, Evelyn sat alone in the old server room. The room where John had once stayed up for days writing original Vetra source code. The same room she'd passed for years without ever wondering who made it possible. She pulled out a notepad and started writing. Not a speech, not a business plan, a letter to Lily. "Dear Lily, you don't know me, and that's probably a good thing, but I know your grandfather, and he changed me, not with power, but with patience." She folded it, left it on John's desk, and walked home, not realizing he'd already been standing in the doorway, quietly watching the whole time. Back in his private journal, John wrote a single line that night. "Kindness isn't loud, but it echoes longer than revenge ever will." 6 months passed. SharpTech had changed. The logo stayed the same, but the soul of the company had shifted completely. Gone were the closed doors and executive-only lounges. The floor plans were redesigned for transparency. Pay gaps narrowed. Internal promotions increased. And the company was now known for something it never once celebrated before: dignity. John refused interviews, declined podcast appearances, ignored book offers. He simply worked. And every Friday afternoon, he picked up Lily from school, brought her to the office cafe, and let her sit in on meetings, coloring while he discussed six-figure contracts. Sometimes she'd ask him innocent things like, "Papa, why does everyone get quiet when you walk in?" He would smile gently and say, "Because they're remembering to be kind." But one Friday, something different happened. Lily sat by the front desk while John finished reviewing a quarterly report. She brought her sketchbook, her newest obsession, and was drawing people in the lobby. Then she turned to the receptionist and asked innocently, "Do you know the lady with the sad eyes?" The receptionist blinked. "Who, sweetheart?" "The one who says hi to me every Friday, but never talks to Papa. She always looks scared." It took her a second to realize Lily was talking about Evelyn. That same evening, as John walked Lily to the car, they passed Evelyn near the elevators. She looked thinner, quieter, still showing up every day, still working, still staying out of sight. "Good night, Mr. Miles," she said softly, nodding. But before John could reply, Lily turned around and ran back toward her. Everyone nearby froze. Lily held out her sketchbook. "I drew you," she said shyly. Evelyn's hand trembled as she took it. The drawing was childlike, big eyes, soft smile, but unmistakably her. "Why me?" Evelyn asked, voice almost cracking. "Because you always look like you're trying," Lily replied. "And Papa says trying matters." John stood silently, watching. That moment, unscripted, unexpected, was louder than any boardroom speech ever given. Evelyn dropped to her knees and hugged the little girl tight. "I'm sorry for how I treated your grandfather," she whispered. Lily whispered back, "He already forgave you, but he's waiting for you to forgive you too." 1 month later, the final shift. John called an all-staff town hall. Every department showed up. Even janitors and cafeteria staff stood shoulder to shoulder with engineers and senior execs. He stepped onto the small stage. No PowerPoint, no slogans, just truth. "I was never supposed to return here," he began. "But I did. Because I needed to remember who I used to be. Not the man who made the money. The man who made the mission." He paused. "But I can't run this forever. And I shouldn't. Not when this place needs new blood. People who've fallen and stood back up stronger." There was silence. And then, he turned his left and extended his hand. "Evelyn Sharp, would you join me?" Gasps rippled through the room. Evelyn stepped forward, hand shaking. She stopped beside him, eyes darting across faces filled with disbelief and cautious hope. "She has changed," John continued. "Not because it was easy, but because it was hard. And she chose to come back every day, knowing what you all thought of her." "I'm not asking you to forget," he said. "I'm asking you to watch." Evelyn stepped up to the mic, voice barely above a whisper. "I was wrong, and I'll probably make mistakes again. But I'll never forget what I learned here. What he taught me. That real leadership starts with listening and with learning to mop the floors you once walked over." Applause didn't come immediately, but it came, and when it did, it roared. Epilogue. 1 year later, the company newsletter announced it. Jonathan Miles retires as chairman, leaves legacy of grace and grit. He stepped away quietly. No grand party, just a handwritten thank you note on every employee's desk and a small engraved plaque left at the front entrance. Dignity isn't a title, it's a choice. Rosa took over as chief operating officer. Evelyn, now officially head of culture and ethics, continued giving talks to young entrepreneurs about what not to do and how to rebuild. Lily's drawing of Evelyn now hung framed in her office. And John, he moved to a modest house outside Portland, spent mornings gardening, afternoons helping local students with engineering projects, evenings reading to Lily. But every now and then, when someone recognized him on the street and asked, "Aren't you the janitor who became a billionaire?" he would smile and say, "No, I'm the janitor who remembered what billionaires forgot." And then he'd walk away, humming softly, mop handle now replaced with a cane carved by Lily herself.